Well, the news broke early Friday morning. Cleveland Browns, Joe Flacco. Let's do it again. Browns 3D on the OBR starts now. Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound Browns 3D on the OBR, brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. We are joined by the OBR's Pete Smith as well here. Certainly been a nice run here. I think everybody has probably missed having a full NFL draft covered. Pete, the other writers here at the OBR have been just crushing it on a daily basis. You guys come out, reading all the content, pouring out at night, checking out everything here on the OBR streaming network, OBR on YouTube, of course, OBR on Twitch. You will have Brad Ward and Quincy Carrier with Things I Think I Know joining us. Coming on after us at 7 o'clock. Certainly the big news of the day, Cleveland Browns, Joe Flacco reuniting, 1-year contract, $4 million up to $13 million. Browns would love to pay every drop of that $13 million because it means probably that Joe Flacco was playing very well, and it probably means that the team was playing well as a whole. Pete, there were a lot of names that we went over, and we started this in one of the first episodes of Browns 3D back in January, and it was never anything that was going to be super exciting, super appealing. We'll get to, Cousins and probably where this all went wrong on that avenue. But now you do have two veteran quarterbacks in the fold. Kenny Pickett, obviously first one here, traded for very early in the offseason process. Now you bring back Joe Flacco. A guy, and for me, the thing, and I've told a lot of you, I didn't know if I ever wanted to see this be a second act between Flacco and the Browns, because 2023 had that May to September romance feel to it, that it was probably never going to be as high as it was then. But looking at the actuality of it, this is probably one of the better things they could have done, just knowing that there just wasn't really that many either A, long-term, or just be overall great options in building this quarterback room.
Yeah, I don't think this was their first choice, but this is where they are now, and they have to play it as it is. And you're either going to have to wait and potentially negotiate a weird situation with Kirk Cousins. You're going to have to sign a Carson Wentz. You're going to have to maybe see what shook loose with Derek Carr if they drafted a quarterback. And this is the easiest, cleanest way to go. The contract is manageable, and there's familiarity there. You have proof of concept. You have seen this work to enough of an effect where you are sitting there going, there are things I can point to and immediately go, this has worked for us with him and these guys around him, like David Njoku and some of these other players. So it gives you a credible veteran. It gives you a professional. And since the Browns are very motivated to get a rookie quarterback in the mix, that's not bad either. And we'll see, he's going to, they've got him and Kenny Pickett. And if they draft a quarterback, or when they draft a quarterback, it's going to make it so they don't have to worry about it. Hopefully. I mean, perfect world that quarterback, especially if it's one of the more developmental guys, never sees the field this year, which is exactly what they should want, exactly what they should be striving for.
Now, and this is the thing, and I know you've talked about this, and I certainly talked about this. And one of the things, that really was the appeal of Kirk Cousins was sure a relationship with Kevin Stefanski, but it was, $1.2 something million, league minimum, basically getting that free ride that Steelers got last year with Russell Wilson. Look, Atlanta again, then picking up another $10 million. And then, now we want something for him, which means, A, I'm going to have to pay a lot more, not the actual all the money, but a lot more certainly than that, 1.2 league minimum. I've got to give up an asset. And again, you would have probably paid Kirk. My guess would have been the 13 you think that maybe Flacco could make if he hits every escalator would have maybe been something you would have had to give to Kirk Cousins. And all the while, you wouldn't know if Cousins was going to be able to give you a full season. So you could have ended up playing Pickett at some point anyway. I think this certainly becomes probably the better option for them. Atlanta, no draft choices, a $30 million backup quarterback. They got their own issues, whatever the world's going on down there in Atlanta. But I think the way it shook out, it probably benefits them. I don't know that this necessarily means Joe Flacco's your quarterback. I don't know if it generally means that Kenny Pickett's your quarterback. I think Summer kind of goes with, let's see who looks best. Let's see what the offense looks best with both of these guys, under center, and then we'll just maybe ride the hot hand until she bucks us, and then maybe we'll just go with the other guy after that.
Yeah, I mean, that tracks with what Kenny Pickett said when he was acquired, and they told him that he was going to get a shot to compete, which is all he wanted. So it makes all the sense in the world, because if he's good enough, however likely you think that is, if he's good enough or wins the job, then the cost of Flacco's contract is the $4 million or whatever. Pickett's contract won't change at all. So Flacco's essentially competing for his contract. So they are protected either against injury or anything else that would happen. So they benefit from that end. They've got two guys that can at least compete, who have both played have started games, have won football games. Neither one is certainly, again, neither of these are necessarily sexy options, but at least in this situation, it makes Kenny Pickett what I sort of have accepted him to be, which is sort of a curiosity. If you don't have Flacco or another veteran and you're sitting there and going, your season hinges on Kenny Pickett, that's pretty terrifying. But if you, with Flacco in the fold, when you're sitting there and going, and you're going to get Kenny Pickett, there's sort of this, well, let's see what he can do. Because if he's great, 153.3 in the preseason, great. Then, awesome. You found something that you can work with. And if he hasn't progressed from where he was with the Steelers, Joe Flacco is there. Like, you're not attached to him, and you've got, Pickett's on the last year of his rookie deal, and it potentially, you just move on from there. But not forcing yourself to be like, Kenny Pickett has to work is certainly a better position. Now it allows him to just be a quarterback. He gets to compete, see how it goes. And if they find something in him, great. But they're going to have that and whatever they draft.
Now, everybody, I would assume, knows by now, Pete and I are both on the stance. And I actually remember it started with conversations Pete and I were having during the college playoffs, and kind of just Abdul Carter just wowed us to that point then. One of my questions, certainly, I've been in regards, if they were to draft Hunter, was, kind of building it, backwards, having everybody here and then trying to find the guy that fits as far as drafting the quarterback. Do you feel if they do go against our grain and bring in Travis Hunter, are you going to be able to feed this? Because, you have a guy last year in Judy who put up ridiculous numbers. David Njoku, it just kind of goes and shows for itself. When David Njoku is successful with a nice statistical output, the team normally wins, plays well. And now you're squeezing in Hunter as well. Do you feel that there's enough to basically feed the three there, Pete?
As long as Joe Flacco's arm doesn't fall off at some point in the summer, yeah. The thing is, like, if they bring in Travis Hunter and they intend to have him be the X receiver, Flacco gives you and him and Njoku and Jerry Jeudy some peace of mind. He has a track record of, he will give his guys a shot to make plays on the ball, and he may throw picks, but he's going to give you every opportunity to go look good. Say what you will about what he did. And it's the same thing with, had they brought back Jameis Winston, it would have been the same thing, just a little less insane in terms of the just the level of volatility. Jameis's peaks were even higher and his valleys were even deeper. Whereas Flacco's not quite as volatile, even though there is that element to it. But he's going to give your guys every shot. So, yeah, I think And I think those guys have to feel pretty good about that situation. I think it's a little bit less known with Kenny Pickett, I think, in like his ability to sort of do that consistently. Joe Flacco is going to throw it. It's going to land where it's going to land, but he's going to throw it. And that's, that is something that receivers, are going to be happy with. They may not love the score at the end of it if he's throwing picks and they're scoring touchdowns, but they're going to get every opportunity to look good. And if the Browns do come to the conclusion that they're going to make the selection of Travis Hunter, you have to feel a little bit better in terms of getting to see him try to maximize his impact as a rookie. Signing Joe Flacco doesn't change your board. It doesn't change anything about how you're going to operate this draft. However, if you were to, if Flacco's not here and you are just rolling him with Kenny Pickett, there's probably a little bit of, we drafted a wide receiver and Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy that's going to get him the ball. And there might be a feeling of, yeah, Travis Hunter's really good, but is the quarterback going to be good enough to make it work to get all these other guys going? Whereas Flacco has a track record for it. And we've seen it here in Cleveland work. He fed Amari Cooper when he was here. He fed David Njoku. Elijah Moore had some big games with those guys. So it's there. Cedric Tillman, now in year 3, a little bit wiser than he was when Flacco was here the first time. Hopefully he gets going in that. So whether it was Jameis Winston or Joe Flacco, and I use these only as they're basically just arm cannons that are going to throw the damn thing around. It's easy to sort of talk yourself into at least being entertained at the notion of Travis Hunter, Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, and Cedric Tillman catching passes from the arm cannon that's going to be behind center.
Well, and the thing there with that is, they should be able to score points. So whatever everybody's issues are with the defense and, what happened last year, this, that, and the other thing, there could be a lot of turnovers, but there certainly should be some points. And, for Joe Flacco, I'll continue to say it. I always say Joe can throw you into a game, and Joe can certainly throw you out of a game. We're going to continue here. I want to be a little bit greedy as far as some of these Browns draft choices. So we're going to talk about that with Pete as we continue. Appreciate everybody for all the support. It's been 3 months now with the relationship here with State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights. They have been great to us. We certainly appreciate them. If you were local to Cleveland, they are your one-stop shop for all things lawn equipment. Listen, you want to spend your Sundays watching the Browns, not cutting your grass. Let the guys at State Sharp help you get your weekend back. They specialize in both residential and commercial equipment for Toro, the brand professionals have been counted on for more than 100 years. Whether you're looking for a new dependable time cutter zero turn, genuine Toro replacement parts, or expert service from experienced technicians who keep your mower in peak condition, State has got your back. They are veteran owned. The Kane family are lifetime Clevelanders, lifetime Browns fans, and proud supporters of us here at the OBR. Again, if you are local to Cleveland, State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service in Broadview Heights is your hometown team for all your lawn equipment needs. All their info is at statesharp.com. That is STATESHARP.com. Latest Browns 3D after us. Again, you will have things I think I know. Brad Ward, Quincy Carrier. So make sure you stick around for that on a Friday night. Some Browns news. Joe Flacco returning to the Cleveland Browns. You can catch all of it on the OBR streaming network. Make sure you're subscribed to the OBR on YouTube and, of course, over on Twitch. Pete, 10 selections here in this draft. Whether or not they make them all, you never know how that plays out. We know how much Andrew Berry loves to manipulate the draft. We know how much Andrew Berry likes to create additional draft capital. Is there the possibility, and you see these trade-ups from 33, and I think everybody just automatically assumes pick 33 is going north in some capacity, then, of course, whatever goes along with it. Can I stay at 33, Pete, and get a quarterback? Am I asking for too much? Am I being too greedy to think that maybe all of a sudden where these quarterbacks, it was, no, there's only two. Well, now maybe there's only one. All of a sudden now they're rising because, of course, we had pro days and people met with them, and the news gets out there and all of a sudden their stock rises when maybe it didn't rise. Is it possible that just three go round one and the Browns can come back Friday night and basically just kick it off with hopefully the guy that turns into be the guy of the future, or at least a piece of what becomes that future quarterback room?
Maybe. I mean, there's a couple. We're going to get really fast indicators on a few of these things. Shedeur is either going to go. Well, he's not going to go in the top three, but if he did, obviously that would be a really clear sign that this could go quick. But if as soon as he gets past three, okay, now you're at 9 with the Saints. Did the Saints take one of those quarterbacks? If they do, you might get a little bit tighter, thinking, it's probably time to start working the phones and making calls. And it's particularly if there's one guy you really want. If the Browns have narrowed down and said, this is our guy, and he's still available, then that's going to give you a little extra motivation and sense of urgency to make a move. Having said that, if the Saints pass or take a Tyler Warren, they need a whole lot of things. So if they take something else and all of a sudden it's just Cam Ward going in the top 10, that suddenly gets interesting because maybe somebody else is going to try to trade up, because the variable here is that, the Browns are one of the teams that could potentially trade up, but they're not the only one, because everybody's, everybody's also thinking that the Giants might move up and go get a quarterback. The Jets, I don't think they will, but they could, or the Raiders from the second round. So you've got another sort of pivot point with the Steelers at 21. Are they going to take a quarterback? The way Mike Tomlin made googly eyes at Jalen Milroe during his pro day, that things almost popped out of his head watching him work out. That's another pivot point. So do the Browns feel like, well, we've got to get ahead of the Steelers to make a move? If not, see how the Steelers play it out. Hey, the Steelers take a defensive tackle. Then all of a sudden, now it's free fall. Now the next team in that mix is 26 at the Rams. Do the Rams feel compelled to take a quarterback because Matt Stafford's getting older and they like one of these guys as sort of a project to work behind him as he plays in his later years? That becomes interesting. And then it becomes the whole trade up thing. So do you need to get ahead of the Rams? You may call Kwesi up. They're missing some picks. They may want to move down. They obviously have that relationship, but they may just want to fill out their board again. That might be an easy pivot point. So that, I don't think it's unreasonable to think the Browns could sit at 33 and get a quarterback. My question is, one, do they want to make sure they get the fifth-year option? I think that's less important than maybe some people view it as. I don't think they necessarily think it's a necessity.
But at that point, if it worked out, you'd be willing to say, all right, well, we just got to extend him and we got to give him more money. Okay, we're okay with that. Or we think we've seen enough to know that we're glad we're not in this for 5 years.
Maybe. I mean, there are certainly circumstances where it would have made sense. I mean, if they could go back in time, I think they would rather have, played out and figured out the fifth-year option with Baker Mayfield. But they are where they are. So there's a whole lot of these areas where they could make a move. Now, some of this comes down to, do teams feel pressure to make moves on these quarterbacks earlier than maybe their appraisal of value should be? In other words, Cam Ward is that guy for this class. But whether it's Dart or Sanders, most people think they're late 1, early 2. Do we get a draft where it's closer to their true valuation, or do we get teams that get antsy and we get sort of a 2011 type situation where you have like what Gabbert and I think I'm thinking of the right class, Locker and those guys, that class where you have Christian Ponder goes at 12, that type of deal. Is that how this plays out? I'm doubtful that it does. I think teams are going to be a little bit more patient, purely because I think for the most part, this class is sort of viewed as Cam Ward and a whole lot of developmental guys. And if you view it as a whole lot of developmental guys, yeah, you may end up with a favorite or two. But if you sort of view it through the lens of they're all developmental guys, the difference between sort of 2 and 8 may not be dramatic, and you may be sort of like, we'll sort of let it play out. I mean, you've heard rumors that the Raiders like Quinn Ewers, for example, and some of these other teams that like different quarterbacks. You know, who's going to like Will Howard? Who's going to end up liking what's his face from Syracuse? There's any number of quarterback options that teams may just be attracted to. So we got to see how that plays out. But as I said before, you're going to know pretty quick. Those top 10 picks are going to tell you a whole lot about how this draft is sort of going to play out.
I mean, because if you told me right now today, okay, well, you can have Jalen Milroe at 33, I'm in. I am absolutely ready to roll. Because I think, a lot of it is, and we talk about this stuff all the time. It's, it's projection and he needs work, and anything you hear in regards to Jalen Milroe basically says, he's not afraid of the work, any of that stuff. And basically everybody seems to say basically to a man / woman that, he will die trying, 2 degrees in his time already at Alabama. So look, for me, if that's the way it goes, and, I certainly think, when it was 3 years ago when you made the Watson trade initially, which led to like the Dobbses and the selection of DTR and Snoop Huntley's, I truly believe there was some belief and effort there from the Browns that they were trying to, preach athleticism as part of what they wanted in their quarterback room. 2023, break glass scenario, Joe Flacco. 2024, break glass scenario, Jameis Winston, and basically got off the beaten path of what they were trying to do. But we'll see the way that plays out. Now, everybody, anybody listening, and I've preached a ton. One of the reasons I'm in firm belief of the Carter selection at 2, and certainly would be the route I would go, is I have so much I have to do on offense between this offseason, and it's looking like it certainly could be the offensive line at minimum next offseason. I throw Carter to the defense, and I think that kind of can take the defense certainly up a few notches back to the top 10 unit that they were in 2023. And, it allows me to fill in the holes of skill that I need to fill in for at least this season. Could have 4/5, maybe an entire offensive line to turn over in next year's offseason. But if it is Hunter in this scenario, what can the Browns? I mean, what is the defense gonna necessarily get? I mean, are you gonna tell me it's it's Tryon, the pass rushing defensive tackle, and that's it? Because you kind of still got to feed both sides of the ball here somehow, some way, and it can't just be 175 or later.
Yeah, I think of the 10 picks, I think about 3 of them need to go on defense. Whether you pick Carter or not, they need a pass rusher.
Between the defensive ends not named Myles Garrett, the 4 of them combined had 10 NFL sacks last year. That's just not enough. It's just not.
Right. Isaiah McGuire is a really good player. Nobody's been higher on him than I am, but that can't be the whole thing. And Joe Tryon is an interesting addition. And Alex Wright, as a
contract
tackle. But they need a pure pass rusher. I mean, I've looked at Carter in this same capacity, which is you are sort of filling, even though Carter ultimately has to become his own fully formed player, you are getting a McGuire plus Carter to equal or be greater than what you're getting out of Myles Garrett. And that's a pretty good situation. But even if you don't, then you need to get a pure pass rushing guy to sort of fill out what McGuire does not give you right now. Even if he takes another step as a pass rusher, and there's reason to believe he can do that, given the pass rush win rate and some of the other things you've seen from him. He's not fast. Like he's a true old school base end. And that doesn't necessarily work against Lamar Jackson and some of the more mobile quarterbacks where you need somebody who can come in. And that's a big selling point on Abdul Carter. But whether if it's a Josiah Stewart or Braden Swinson or any number of these, Antoine Powell-Ryland from Virginia Tech, these smaller, but very fast guys who can track down a moving target like that. That's a big important piece of it. They have to, even though they signed Malik Collins, they have to sort of figure out the rest of the defensive tackle room. So they need a guy there as well. Now, do they want an old school nose, which Dalvin Tomlinson was playing, or does Jim Schwartz sit there and go, I just like having a bunch of these more athletic guys that can get off the ball and cause problems and get another one of those. Either way, you need more. So you need one of those. And then at some point in this draft, they've got to get a DB. And I don't like this class for DBs, but they got to get one. And it stands to reason it's probably going to be safety. If I had to guess, safety makes the most sense because they lost, in addition to the fact they moved on from Juan Thornhill, they also lost DeAnthony Bell in free agency. So Ronnie Hickman is there. Certainly he could, I think.
Not to mention McLeod. So, yeah, I mean, you lost almost all the safety.
I think Ronnie Hickman will get his shot to sort of compete to earn the free safety job. But, he still would need a third guy, and he could end up being that anyway. You need that special teams component that DeAnthony Bell gave you. So I think they may try to sort of knock out the DeAnthony Bell part in the draft or something else. I mean, they could take a free safety, certainly, as somebody to develop, but I think ultimately they're going to want a veteran there as well. But they got to fill out that room. So even if they use all 10 picks, they still got to get three things out of this draft, I think, on that side of the ball. And this notion that if they take Abdul Carter, the offense is hopelessly lost. I guess, they could take a quarterback at 33 or move up. They can take you're going to take, I think, two running backs in this draft. They can get a receiver, a tight end somewhere in this draft as well. I just don't accept the idea that if they don't use two on offense, that all hope is lost. They have any number of options. They're ultimately going to pick whoever they feel is the best player available and go from there. And I think that's a perfectly valid option, regardless of which one they choose.
Because look, even if you went the Carter route at 2, just say my scenario, world goes perfectly, everything breaks perfectly. You get Milroe in your pocket at 33, 64. Then 64 and then 94 wide receiver, tight end, whatever combination maybe works for them. You still have 104, which maybe, if you're expecting the safety to be somewhat productive, would probably somewhere in that range, but wide receiver, tight end, certainly, and safety within those three selections. And, you have the big layoff then, which is almost 2 rounds from 104 to 175, but I believe it's like 179. I think it's 192 and 200. And I know it sounds, and people really aren't going to believe me, but if you really go through this running back class, and if you want to, 175, 192, 200, you can probably just take 2 right there. Look, they're not, as of this point, they're not facing much competition for playing time anyway, but there are going to be guys on day 3 that are pretty much going to walk into NFL, headquarters and be given a playbook. And as long as they don't screw it up, their opportunity for playing time is going to be there.
Yeah, I think the talent is there. I think it's deep, and I think it has something for everybody. There's system variety and all that. So the Browns are going to be able to find guys they like. Unless the value is just so good, I'm hoping that they wait till round 4 at the earliest, and then
so that 104 spot.
Yeah, but because I do think you can get those guys, and I'd rather focus the attention elsewhere on those things that are harder to get. An offensive tackle, a wide receiver, those type of positions, or edge rusher, whichever one they didn't take it to. I think at tight end, those are more difficult to find than running back. If the player is there and they love him at running back, I get it. Pull the trigger, but I think there is reason for them to feel like they can be patient, get a contributor, get 2 contributors. Jerome Ford is certainly a pretty good back. And if Nick Chubb comes back, you've got 4. Figure it out at that point. But especially the way the running back position is changing, where, you used to need, well, they've got to be able to do, all these different things. Now you can take specialized skill sets and fill out a room because you can fit, have a tool fit the job. You need a speed guy. Okay, we got that. We need somebody who can contribute in the passing game. Okay, guy who can be a good in pass protection, a pure between the tackles power guy. You can outfit your room to have all these different things. So regardless of the situation, as long as the blocking is there and as long as there is a baseline of talent, you can be productive. And that's got to be a critical part of this. I mean, Joe Flacco, if he's the starter or it's Kenny Pickett or it's a rookie who's just unbelievable and unexpectedly great, they've got to be able to run the ball. When Flacco was here in 2023, I mean, I still can't get over the fact that they were beating the absolute hell out of your former Jets. And they, in the second half, they had to pass to run clock because they just couldn't go anywhere on the ground. They've been dealing with this since Nick Chubb's injury, since the knee injury. They have not been able to consistently run the ball. They've had moments. Jerome Ford against the Ravens in 2023 was a great game for them, but they need to be able to consistently run the ball, take pressure off them, help out the play action game, and not put it so the quarterback has to carry the whole offense, because that's going to reduce the volatility and hopefully eliminate some of the turnover risk.
I'll give you, and we'll close with this one, Pete. Give me one offensive day 3 guy that is a Pete Smith must-have, and one defensive day 3 guy that is a Pete Smith must-have dream get for the Browns.
I mean, Devin Neal's my guy at running back. he just is. I'm sure Devin Neal watches the show. Look, Devin Neal, he is not a great athlete. He's certainly not a bad athlete. He just gets how to play running back. Angles, setting up his blocks, sees it. He knows he's a great weapon as a pass catcher. He's the most other than Ashton Genty, he is the most efficient running back in the class. First down, second down, third down, red zone. He is phenomenal. You think you've got him down in the backfield, he will find a way to get you yards. It's not pretty, but man, he just gets it done. Watch him against Colorado. He ended up with like 260 total yards, and he did it in every way you could. He's just a guy, running back. Granted, I get it. And I love athleticism. I love the testing and all that. Running back, whether it's youth, high school, the whole way up, that position usually sorts itself out real fast. Guys either know how to do it or they don't. And he gets it. Defensively, man, that's interesting. Defensive tackle, man. I'm a big fan of CJ West, I guess. I'll go with CJ West, former Kent State player who finished at Indiana. He's short, he's stubby. It's none of it's pretty, but he's extremely fast off the ball. He's disruptive. He fits what Jim Schwartz wants. There's a little bit of a concern with how well he's going to hold up when guys can get their hands on him, but he's so slippery. He's great on stunts. He just plays extremely high effort football. If you listen to him interview, very smart guy. He loves Malik Collins, which is already going in the right direction. He just gets it. And, I think this is a difficult position to sort of project for the Browns, simply because Jim Schwartz has basically just picked the guys he likes. So it's not like, oh, there's these metrics you have to look for. Basically, I want him. CJ West fits the things I think Jim Schwartz wants in that position. He gives you sort of that Juwan Briggsy sort of feel, which I think they would love to get another one of those guys who can stop the run and cause problems. He's just a guy who causes havoc. And because he's sort of a specific fit, I'm not convinced he won't be available a little bit later than some of the prognosticators, and that might be a round 4 pick or something there in that area. But he's just a guy who really, really good player. And he goes against a lot of the things I like. Again, trying to guess Jim Schwartz, not very productive, just disruptive.
Couple of Pete Smith favorites, but your big news as we close out the week here on Browns 3D. Flacco, round 2, 1 year, $4 million deal. up to $13 million, possibly. Browns, it's been a slow process, but at least now 2 quarterbacks in the building. Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, less than 2 weeks away from the 2025 NFL draft. Again, all the support here, certainly for the site, all the written content. Guys are busting their butts every day, trying to give you guys a fresh mock draft every day. Jack Duffin in the math and the numbers, and I'm sure at times probably some of you all, your heads are spinning. Those of us who work with Jack, I'm not going to lie, most of us are probably in the same scenario with that sometimes. But we appreciate all of that, certainly coming out for the nightly streaming here on the OBR streaming network. Make sure you subscribe to the OBR, of course, on YouTube, the OBR over on Twitch. Browns 3D on the OBR has been brought to you by State Sharpening Mower Sales and Service. Look, something breaks this weekend, we'll continue to be there. This is kind of like fireman type of stuff. You're on call here, and with 2 weeks away, trying to see the way it all stacks up. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. Browns 3D on the OBR. Everybody, have a great weekend.